Hello everyone, good day. This is Ma'am Nera once again and welcome to my YouTube channel. This is another personal development session and we shall feature Module 11, Powers of the Mind. In this activity, you shall be able to know more about the brain parts and its function, the brain dominance, and the different lobes of the brain. How do we develop the powers of the mind? Many people think of the brain as a mystery, but new research shows that the brain is like a muscle. It changes and gets stronger when you use it. The muscles becomes larger and stronger with exercise. Thus, when you stop exercising, the muscles shrink and you get weaker. That is why we often say use it or lose it. Now, in this module, we are going to learn more about the powers of the mind. Are you ready? So here are the learning objectives of this module. So number one is to discuss different parts of the brain and their functions. And number two is to understand how the brain functions help improve the processes of one's thoughts, feelings, behavior, and actions. Let us now proceed to vocabulary list. So we have cortex. We also have brainstem, basal ganglia, cerebellum, and cerebrum. So let us define this one by one. The cortex is the outermost layer of brain cells. Thinking and voluntary movements begin in the cortex. We also have the brainstem. Our brainstem is between the spinal cord and the rest of the brain. Basic functions such as breathing and sleep are controlled by our brainstem. We also have the basal ganglia. So these are cluster of structures in the center of our brain. The basal ganglia coordinate messages between multiple other brain areas. Okay, so we also have cerebrum. Cerebrum is the large outer part of the brain. It controls reading, thinking, learning, speech, emotions, and planned muscle movements like walking. Then the cerebellum. The cerebellum is at the base and at the back of the brain. The cerebellum is responsible for coordination and balance. Our brain also has four several lobes. We have the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the temporal lobe, and the occipital lobe. The frontal lobe is responsible for problem solving, judgment, and motor function. Then we also have the parietal lobe. The parietal lobe manages sensation, handwriting, and body position. Then we also have the temporal lobe. Our temporal lobe is involved with memory and hearing. The occipital lobe also is another brain lobes that contains the brain's visual processing system. Let us now proceed to our pre-test. Shall be able to recall or remember some of the brain parts as our pre-test is identification. So the direction is for you to identify what is being asked in each item and write your answer in your journal. Okay, so always bring with you your journal because we will be using it all throughout our subject. Okay, so number one is it determines a person's preferences, problem-solving style, personality characteristics, and leads to determine learning styles of a person. Number two is that this is one of the lobes of the brain that interprets vision. So it includes color, light, and movement. Number three, it is the part of the brain which initiates movement, temperature, touch, vision, hearing, judgment, and reading. So we also have number four. It controls functions that keep people alive, such as breathing, heart rate, blood pressure, and food digestion. Number 5, Carl is fond of listening to music, sharing ideas, looking for personal meaning, and making sure that he is in a win-win solution or win-win situation. What part of the brain is dominant to him? Number 6, it is the part of the brain that is responsible for coordination and balance. Number 7, this is one of the lobes of the brain which is involved in memory and hearing. Then number 8, its main functions include processing sensory information, regulating blood pressure and breathing, and also releasing hormones. Then for number 9 and 10, you're going to give 2 activities that will improve the functions of the brain to improve thoughts, behavior, and feelings. Okay, so let us now go to learning activity 1, the brain game. The direction is to draw the figure in a short coupon band, and you're going to label its part and give at least one function to it. So this is the brain game activity. Processing for learning activity 1. Number 1, what is a brain? How does it work? Number 2, give the different parts of the brain and its functions. And number 3, why is there a need for us to know the different parts and functions of the brain? Learning activity 2, brain dominance. The direction is the box below contains different characteristics and activities. So you can see there at the upper portion of the activity or of the slide. Then you're going to classify each characteristics on where it is usually dominant. So we have the left brain dominance and the right brain dominance. If the characteristics are dominant in the left brain, put it in the left column. Then if they are dominant in the right brain, you are going to put it in the right column. Processing, what is brain dominance? What are the different characteristics of right and left brain dominance? Why is there a need for us to know if we are right-brained or left-brained individuals? Let us understand more our brain, the human brain. So the brain is an organ that is made up of a large mass of nerve tissue protected within the skull. It plays a role in just about every major body system. Some of its main functions include processing sensory information, regulating blood pressure and breathing, and also it releases hormones. We shall now proceed discussing the parts and functions of the brain. The brain can be divided into 3. We have the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the brain stem. Again, what are the 3 parts of the brain? You can see now the human cerebrum. The cerebrum is the largest brain structure. The cortex tissue consists mainly of cell bodies and its folds and features, which gives the cerebrum its trademark rumpled surface. The cerebral cortex has the left and right hemisphere. Each hemisphere can be divided into 4 lobes: the frontal lobe, the temporal, occipital, and parietal lobe. The lobes are functional segments. They specialize in various areas of our thought and memory, planning and decision making, and speech and sense perception. The functions of our cerebellum include initiation of movement, coordination of movement, temperature, touch, vision, hearing, judgment, reasoning, and problem solving. The cerebrum, the large outer part of our brain, controls reading, thinking, learning, speech, emotions, and planned muscle movements like walking. Our cerebrum is divided into 4 lobes. We have the frontal, the temporal, the parietal, and the occipital. Each lobe may be divided once again into areas that serve very specific functions. It is important to understand that each lobe of the brain does not function alone. There are very complex relationships between the lobes of the brain and between the right and left hemisphere. So let us discuss one by one the different lobes. The frontal lobe. The frontal lobe, so here is your frontal lobe, yung nasa unahan natin na part ng ano natin dito. So this one is your frontal lobe. So the frontal lobe is said to be the largest section of the brain located in the front of the head. The frontal lobe is involved in personality characteristics and movement. Also, recognition of smell usually involves part of the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is concerned with our personality, behavior, emotions, judgment, planning, problem solving, speech, body movement, intelligence, concentration, and self-awareness. Then we also have the parietal lobe. So after the frontal lobe, we have the parietal lobe. This is located at the middle portion of our brain. It helps a person identify objects and understand spatial relationships where one's body is compared to objects around the person. So our parietal lobe is also involved in interpreting pain and touch in the body. Okay, so specifically, our parietal lobe is important or responsible in interpreting language, words, sense of touch, pain, temperature. It interprets signals from the different senses of our body. Okay, the vision, the hearing, the motor, and sensory, and memory, and also the spatial and the visual perception. So that is our parietal lobe. Then we also have the occipital lobe. So after naman ng ating parietal lobe, yung ditong part na to is our occipital lobe. The occipital lobe is the back part of the brain that is involved with vision. So our occipital lobe again interprets vision, color, light, and movement. Then on the side of the brain is our temporal lobe. So these temporal lobes are involved in short-term memory, speech, musical rhythm, and some degree of smell recognition. Then specifically, ang ating temporal lobe is responsible for understanding language, memory, hearing, sequencing, and organization. Then we also have the cerebellum. So this is another part of our brain. Yung nauna po ay yung ating cerebrum. Pangalawa itong cerebellum. Ang ating cerebellum is the second largest part of the brain. It sits below the posterior or beneath the occipital lobe of the cerebrum and behind the brain stem as part of the hindbrain. Like the cerebrum, the cerebellum has left and right hemispheres. A middle region, the vermis, connects them. Within the interior tissue rises a central white stem called the arbor vitae because it spreads branches and sub-branches through the hemisphere. The function or primary function of our cerebellum is to maintain posture, movement, and balance. When we jump to the side, reach forward, and turn suddenly, it subconsciously evaluates each movement. So the cerebellum then sends signals to the cerebrum indicating muscle movements that will adjust our position to keep us steady. Cerebellum natin, ang pinaka-function talaga niya is for balance movement and posture. Okay? Then we go to the third part of our brain, which is the brain stem. Our brain stem connects the spinal cord to the higher thinking centers of the brain. It consists of three structures. We have the medulla oblongata, the pons, and the midbrain. The medulla oblongata, which is part of the brain stem, is a continuous with the spinal cord and connects to the pons above. It is the most vital part of the entire brain and consists important control centers for the heart and lungs. We also have the pons. The pons helps control breathing rhythms. The medulla handles respiration, digestion, and circulation, and reflexes such as swallowing, coughing, and sneezing. Then our midbrain contributes to motor control, vision, and hearing, as well as vision and hearing related reflexes. Both the medulla and the pons are considered part of the hindbrain. The midbrain, or mesencephalon, connects the pons to the diencephalon and forebrain. So besides relaying sensory and motor signals, the structures of the brainstem direct involuntary functions. Then we also have the spinal cord as part of our brainstem. The spinal cord is a large bundle of nerve fibers connected or located in the back that extends from the base of the brain to the lower back. The spinal cord carries messages to and from the brain and the rest of the body. So that is our brain stem. So again, what are the three parts of the brain? We have the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and our brain stem. What are the four lobes of the brain? We have the forebrain, the parietal, the occipital, and the temporal brain. Okay? What are the parts of our brain stem? Ayan, so kasama dyan yung ating medulla oblongata, pons, and our midbrain. Okay, so congratulations, my dear students. I hope you were able to memorize the different parts of the brain and understand their functions. Now let us proceed to how we can maximize or power up our brain through lateralization. It was Robert Ornstein and Roger Sperry which theorized brain lateralization. It states that each side of the brain has different specific functions. While humans use both sides, each one has a dominant side, which according to the theory explains much about his or her behavior, interest, personality, and mode of thinking. So this lead to the coined terms left-brained and right-brained individuals. Let us explore more about this lateralization. Okay, so you can see here the left brain and the right brain. So accordingly, you may hear that someone is a right-brained or left-brained individual. This is called the brain dominance, meaning that an individual has a natural preference or processing information on one side of the brain. The right brain is considered the intuitive or spontaneous side of the brain, while the left side is logical. So knowing an individual's brain dominance can help you understand different ways of thinking, behaving, speaking, and functioning. And it also help parents and educators to plot activities to a child's natural learning preferences. So these are the description of if a person is left-brained or right-brained. So ang left-brained people daw are organized, they are logical, and they are detail-oriented. They prepare sequencing, linear thinking, mathematics, thinking in words, they like to set goals, they interpret information well, and they also keep a tidy room. They answer questions spontaneously and follow directions and read directions. We also have the right brain. Okay, so if you are a right brain person, most probably you are intuitive, you are a risk taker, you are creative, then you prefer imagination, holistic thinking, rhythm, feelings, visualization, daydreaming, adventure, writing, fantasies, and you are more on expressing yourself. So for the wrap up, we have this activity. Yan, so you can see Jose Rizal and Leia Salonga. So which brain side do you think is more dominant among these popular Filipinos, and why do you think so? Then for number 2, in general, how do the functions of the brain affect the learning process of a person? Number 3, what concepts have you learned in this module, and what have you discovered about yourself in relation with the module? Let us proceed to our application. So you can see here a graphic organizer. You're going to cite different activities or exercises that will help develop the right and left hemispheres of the brain. So again, you're going to write your answers on the space provided to complete the graphic organizer. For the processing, here are 3 questions. Number 1, why is there a need to exercise or do activities to your brain? 2, why is it important to know these different activities? Why? And number 3, what insights have you learned from these activities? Okay, congratulations, my dear students. We are now on our post-test. Okay, so we have 2 sets of questions here. The first is for the identification, and the second, you're going to write whether it is LBD or RBD. Okay, number 1, it pertains to an individual with a natural preference for processing information on one side of the brain. Number 2, the brain dominance, which includes everything related to intuitive, holistic, and imaginary thinking. Number 3, the part of the brain which is responsible for initiation of movement, coordination of movement, temperature, touch, vision, hearing, judgment, and reasoning and problem solving. Next, number 4, this lobe of the brain determines personality and emotions. Number 5, Kyla likes to collect data, listen to informative lectures, judge facts and criteria, and logical reasoning. What part of the brain is dominant to her? Then for number 6, again, so you're going to write LBD for left brain and RBD for right brain. Number 6, risk takers are they are risk takers and creative. Number 7, answer question spontaneously. Then for number 8, the question is, they like to set goals. Okay, are they LBD or RBD? Number 9, adventurous and imaginative. And number 10, they love science and mathematics. So for your assignment, my dear students, you're going to write your answers in your journal for the 2 questions below. So number 1, you're going to cite at least 5 preferred activities for right and left-brained individuals. And for number 2, define what is a mind map and look for examples and write your source. Okay, so here are the feature correction for this module. Okay, so thank you very much, my dear students. We are now done with Personal Development Module 10, Brain Parts and Functions, or the powers of the mind, I mean. We are now with our Personal Development Module 11, the powers of the mind. I hope you have learned from our discussion with different parts of the brain dominance, and also the 4 lobes of the brain. Remember that our brain is a muscle, that when we are able to use it, then the more information that we are able to absorb, the more that we are able to retain information, and less forgetting is achieved.